So here comes the mid-season cut, and there's a lot of haters out there. But did you know the cut has significant fantasy implications? Well, we're going to get into all of that. Hey, I'm Old Surf Dad, and in this Margaret River preview, we're going to check the surf forecast for Western Australia. Then we're going to look at some key stats in the Old Surf database. And finally, I'm going to make my men's and women's fantasy picks. But first, let's check in with our Fantasy Surf League. So we have a Fantasy Surf League around here, and you can join. There's a trophy for the season champion, and winners from each event will be recognized in our Hall of Fame. Just go to oldsurfdad.com for more information. Now, some of you may not be aware that we have a team in our fantasy roster called Hat Picks, which is literally me picking names out of a hat. At Bells Beach, Hat Picks was 42nd overall and beat me in half the league. I blurred your names to save the embarrassment, but go check it out. It's hilarious and proves that sometimes it's just a lottery. So let's talk about those that did win with their picks. Big congratulations to Captain Blondebeard for the win. He'll be able to see his name listed on the Hall of Fame page with other event winners for the year. RTG was next and runner-up with over 800 points. Keps is back again in the top 5, moving up a notch to number 3. Last year's fierce competitor, Mr., is in the 4th position. Good to see you, my friend. And finally, Linda Velacos rounds out the top 5. Again, congratulations to all of you. Now let's look at the overall rankings following the Bells event. The OldSurfDad.com League has some of the best fantasy teams in the world, starting with Captain Blondebeard, who's ranked 20th out of more than 100,000 teams. Just the Tip is in 2nd position, ranked 31st in the world. The Consistency of TJ Art is in 3rd, RTG is in 4th, and ranked in the top 100 in the world, and Yerub is back on the list at number 5. Remember, the overall winner gets inducted into the Hall of Fame and wins the championship trophy. Finally, I want to mention that we have text chat set up through Discord to talk about all things surfing and fantasy, and I welcome you to join. During the events, I have stats on matchups and other info to enhance the event. You can participate or just hang out, it's up to you. It's a good time, and this is your invite. Okay, moving on to the surf forecast for Western Australia. So we're looking at live footage of Margaret River as I make this video. It looks like some of the pros are out getting warmed up. Margaret's is one of those spots that we don't have to worry too much about swell. But how are the conditions going to be? Let's take a more detailed look and check out the surf forecast. The waiting period starts on the small side and then rapidly picks up with a west swell, but with it comes onshore winds and bumpy conditions. For the following weekend, the swell could hold and clean conditions should prevail, and we could see heats in the water on Friday and Saturday, the 29th and 30th of April. While there's no major swell predicted for the second half of the waiting period, this is West Oz and swells develop quickly. Remember, the Bells forecast looked horrible, and we came out of there with great waves, except, again, we kind of got skunked on finals day. Did anyone else notice how epic Bells was after the contest left town and there was still time in the waiting period? I'd like to see the WSL be more patient with wave selection and hold the events in the best possible conditions. So in the past, the WSL has used 3 world-class locations for competition, including Margaret River Main Break, then the sketchy shallow reef called the Box, which is just a few hundred meters from Main Break, and finally North Point, which is around 20 minutes up the road. Most heats have been run at Main Break, 352 of them to be exact, or about 84% of all the competition. There's been 41 heats at the Box and only 24 at North Point. While North Point is an amazing destination, I could see the WSL brushing it to save costs, but I would love to see another 10-point ride like Seabass had back in 2017. All right, let's look at some stats in the Old Surf database. So there's a lot of talk about the mid-season cut, and I definitely have some opinions on that, which I've been sharing in the Discord chat. But I want to stay focused on how the cut affects your fantasy team. Let's start with team lock deadlines. This is from the fantasy rulebook found right here on the WSL Fantasy page. This is the rule that talks about reselects and when your team starts earning points. Now, before the mid-season cut, your team starts earning points in the round of 32. But after the cut, your team doesn't start earning points until the round of 16, which means you'll not be able to earn as many points after Margaret River starting in G-Land. And it's the same thing for the women's. You don't start earning points until the quarterfinals. This is the last chance for a big payout of fantasy points. Why? Because after the cut, there are less surfers and therefore less points. So in other words, you don't want to suck here. It's like our own fantasy cut line, and maybe more reason to hate the cut. So speaking of the cut, let's look at the rankings. So here's the men's rankings, and those in green have already made the cut. Then you can see the cut line between Luca Macinas, who is barely hanging on, and Connor Coffin, who is just outside. Now, each surfer has the opportunity to earn a lot of points, especially if you make the quarterfinals or beyond. It can literally save your career. A win virtually guarantees you a spot on tour, unless you're Moana Jones, and I'll save that rant for another forum. Caleb Robson went from cut line to G-Land with his recent Bells runner-up finish, and Kelly and Barron are in the top 5 because of their wins. And look at Filipe Toledo. He's way ahead on points. Those at the bottom of the cut are going to need a quarterfinals or better finish and hope surfers ahead of them have poor results. So who's going to G-Land and who's going to Snapper? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Now here's the women's rankings, and the competition is fierce with only 10 spots available. Some of the individual heats may actually determine who makes the cut and who doesn't. I'm sure the World Surf League will play up these dramatic moments, which in my opinion are getting a bit too reality TV. But hey, I'm sure it gets ratings, but honestly, I think we're better than that. All right, let's get into some key stats to help us make our men's and women's fantasy picks. I think looking at recent semifinals results shows who is consistent at each event, and the statistics didn't let me down at Bells. So here we go again. Looking at 2017, this was the year that John first showed us the kind of radical power surfing we love to see at Margaret's. That year, he set the record with the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th highest scores ever at this event. And the number 1 spot? That goes to Kelly, who in 2015 beat now coach to the WCT Stars, Glenn Micro Hall, with a 19.5. In 2018, they ran 2 rounds at Margaret's and then called it off due to a series of shark attacks in the area. The event was postponed and later resurfed in Uluwatu and won by William Cardoso. Now, check out 2019, and no, I didn't mix up the slides. That's Kolohe and John in the finals again. And just like 2017, Kolohe was a runner-up and John the champion. That's probably why he is heavily favored by the Australian odds makers to repeat. You can find the complete odds line for all the surfers at oldsurfdad.com. Now last year, Filipe Toledo was a champion, and he's coming in hot off a Bells win. I remember the waves were huge, and no one picked Filipe, and he surprised everyone. Is this his year? Time will tell. Jordy was runner-up, defeating Griff in the semis, and hard-charging Matthew McGilvray lost in the semis to Filipe. That's the kind of result McGilvray is going to need to keep his dream tour alive. We carry on to the women's. Sally Fitzgibbons, who almost needs a win here to qualify, was a 2017 champion, beating both Steph Gilmore and Tyler Wright. In 2019, Lakey beat Carissa and Tati beat Sally to meet in the finals where Lakey would get the win. In 2021, Carissa, who hasn't had a win here since 2014, would lose to Steph Gilmore, and Tati would go on to defeat both Bronte McCauley and Steph for the championship. I'm ready to move on to some men's and women's fantasy picks. All right, you ready to make some fantasy picks? Let's go. All right, so let's go to Tier A in the women's, and I think most people's teams will be one of two things, either a Carissa team or a Tyler team. I'm going to stay with Carissa and make her my power surfer. Moving on to Tier B, there's a lot of great picks here, and I want to show you guys something that you may not have seen before. Up here in the upper right, there's Show Career Event Stats, and it's a toggle switch, and it will tell you what their numbers are at this particular event. And you'll notice Tati's got some pretty good numbers here, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Tati. And let's go back in there. And if it's toggled, you see India Robinson has no experience, so it's blank. But let's go back to the heat win percentage for the 2022 season, and you'll see the next highest one is Malia at 58%. That's pretty solid. Now let's see how she does at the career. Her career at this event, it's 38.46. So this is a great way to get further stats to make your picks. I see Courtney here. Her career at this event is 66%. I promise myself I will never pick Courtney again, but I might make an exception. Courtney overall this year has been 41%. I think I'm going to go with Malia. She's got a lot of experience here. She surfs the box, and I can always reselect. All right, moving on to Tier C. This one for me is pretty easy. I'm going to go with Molly Picklum. She charges big waves. Hopefully there'll be some. And let's look at, the only other person who served here is Isabella Nichols. Now, Caroline Marks, I don't expect her to show up. If she does, that will definitely be my pick. So for Tier C, Molly Picklum. All right, let's move on to the men. Now, the men is both easy and difficult at the same time. Is that possible? I'm definitely taking John for my power surfer with the way that he tears his place apart. Now, for my next pick, I'm going to go with what everyone else is going to pick, and that's going to be Filipe Toledo. He's got a heat win percentage of 76%, and here at this event, he's got the highest win percentage, which is 59%. It's a no-brainer for me, but there's a lot of other talent here, like Ethan Ewing, like Elo Ferrero, and even Miguel Pupo, who could run away with this thing. And there's Kelly, laying there in the shadows, waiting to make his comeback. All right, let's go ahead and pick Filipe and move on to Tier B. In Tier B, I like these four surfers right here in a row. I'm definitely going to take Jack Robinson. Next, I'm going to move on, and I think I've decided I am going to take Jordy. And let's look at his career stats here. So he's got a 61%. Look at Kolohe's got a 70%. And I think that has a lot to do with what we saw in the Old Surf database, is his two semifinals finishes in 2017 and 2019. I'm going to go ahead and pick Jordy. And I just don't know about Kolohe this year. I think I'm going to, tell you what, I'm going to take Kolohe and see how he does in the first two rounds and perhaps reselect. And then the other pick is going to be Jackson Baker. Why Jackson Baker? Because it's fun. Jackson Baker, it absolutely has a powerful back foot that I love to watch, and he has some results. Let's go back in there and look at this. Jackson Baker has a 60% win percentage. That's better than anyone else here. Look at that. Only Griffin is close with 57%. So it's not only a fun pick, it's a solid pick. Okay, moving on to Tier C. In Tier C, it looks like I pre-selected Imai Kalani DeVault, which when looking through this, that is who I want. I think Imai is going to do well in these Hawaiian-type waves, and I saw something in him at Bells that finally convinced me he's ready to play. All right, and the other pick is pretty easy for me. It's Joao Chianca. Now, what I noticed is in going through all these, there is no Kaiwi Belly. Now, I don't know if the WSL hasn't fully set up the fantasy yet, but I see Gabriel Medina. Is Gabriel Medina coming back, or is this just a hoax? I don't know. But if Kaiwa Belly gets back in here, he's definitely going to be my pick for one of these two tiers. I think he would probably be in Tier B by now. All right, those are my picks. Who are your power surfers? Let me know in the comments. All right, so let's talk survival. So far, I've used John at Pipeline, Jack Robinson at Sunset Beach, Kanoa in Portugal, and Filipe Toledo at Bells Beach. So for Margaret River, I'm taking Italo Ferreira and hope that my streak continues. How about you? Are you still alive in Survival? If so, let me know who your choice is in the comments below. Hey, I want to shout out to all the new subscribers out there and acknowledge those who have been here from the beginning. I really appreciate all of you. If you haven't yet subscribed, feel free to join us. If you got something out of this video, give it a like. It really helps the channel. All right, thanks for watching and good luck with your fantasy team. We'll see you on the next one.